Welcome to Dose of Social, your recipe for social media success. I'm Lindsay Mauk,
I'm Kayla Pearlstein.
and this is Dose of Social.
Social.
I am super excited to have today's guest on the show with a topic that our listeners love here on Dose of Social, AI. So very excited to introduce Vix Reitano, founder and growth partner of Agency 6B. Thanks so much for joining us today, Vix.
Thanks, Lindsay. Kayla, I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Vix, why don't we start off by having you share a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, you got it. So it's funny because I love me some AI, but I have been doing this for 2 decades. I help founders figure out exactly why their revenue isn't growing and what the way it should and build a system to fix it, right? My AI work has been primarily custom built solutions since 2020 when we were building custom APIs, but I've been building software since I was in high school. I started coding many, many years before that. My mother was a computer teacher and actually learned how to code when I was like a little kid. So to me, systems are something that I have spoke the language of for so long, and AI is just another system. And for the last 10 years, right when I started my business, I've been in business 11 years, but when I started the business, I started teaching for Google. And one of the things that we did was we taught people about the knowledge graph, which looking back now, Monday morning quarterback, right? I realized we were training Google AI search in the same time. So it's kind of crazy to see all this stuff come full circle. I think people get intimidated by it, but like I actually code in the terminal. And I could tell you it's not as intimidating as you think it is. And I think women need to be part of the conversation now more than ever.
That's awesome.
I love that. Wow. So cool. So for those listening who are new to AI, sounds like you've been doing this for a while, since OG of AI. We wanted to get started with some basic terms because there's a lot of terms circulating these days around AI. And I know that there are a lot of business owners and brands who are still not familiar with these terms. So let's start with some basic terms for our audience in regards to AI. The first one is LLM. So I know like we've probably heard that one a lot floating around, but Vix, if you could tell us what is an LLM and why should a business owner care about it?
An LLM is a large language model, and it is essentially the underlying technology of AI tools. So, large language model is the way that it was trained. And what it really means is that it was just trained on huge data sets that are human like text. I did a training recently, and someone who is far more technical than I am, which I think is kind of crazy, right? When you meet different people at different levels, you're like, this is wild. But what she spoke about was how, when you get a letter, right? Like we still sometimes get letters in the mail, and there's that barcode on the bottom of the letter, or really anytime you go shopping. The machine that sorts your mail, USPS, reads that barcode. A large language model, a machine, processes words in the same way. So all computers at their core process a series of patterns, which is usually numbers, right? In this case, it's the way the letters are put together to form a language. And a large language model is just what AI is built on. Claude, GPT, Gemini. I call it the alphabet soup of search now because between GEO and LEO and LLMEO and all this stuff, everybody's just trying to find a way to make their mark in this industry, similar to years ago, right? I mean, I started my career in organic. I was a digital producer at Live with Kelly and Michael, Meredith Vieira, Bethany Frankel. Like I lived in this world when nobody knew what Twitter was. I watched Vine go down. So they're all platforms, they're all models, they're all just different tools and technology to achieve a goal. And in this case, the goal is to organize, synthesize, and then output content that is word-based, language-based.
So, what happens when someone asks an LLM like ChatGPT, who's the best social media marketing agency for my e-commerce brand? And how does it decide what to say and what shows up?
So this goes back to the way that I describe SEO, which is to a visual, right? I mean, I'm a visual person. I think most of us in the creative field are visual. So this starts with, think about a web. Like for any of the moms out there, if you think about a ball pit with those everybody was a kid once, right? When you were like climbing on those webs in those like McDonald's ball pits, right? That now give you the heebie-jeebies. The heavier you were as you got bigger, the further down you went, right? The heavier things are. So to go back to your question about how they work, in SEO and why people did keyword stuffing, it's because it made your website heavy. So if you think of the internet as a web and your website as one of many holes, the goal was when people were searching for terms, when they put crawlers out, they would fall in your hole first because it was the biggest and not a shallow pothole, right? I'm a New Yorker. So everything in my mind is like, there's a whole hole here. Like, how do we get around it? In this case, they are not only looking for that now, they are also looking for established expertise, age of site. So like that is how you establish EEAT is what it is. It's expertise, experience, which is longevity. A is authority, T is trustworthiness. Those two, I believe, are the ones that are the most challenging right now because AI tools can fake those two better than anything else. Expertise and experience, longevity, you can't fake, right? That's why, like, when brands rebrand and throw away an old domain, it makes my heart hurt. What it looks for, though, is content. So it's looking for information about your business. And when you say the best AI or e-commerce brand, it's not what most e-commerce brands are talking about. So the biggest challenge for most business owners now is in the gap of what they are presenting and what's on their website and their digital archives, because that counts, and what they actually think they're presenting. So it's much more about answering the questions your users, your customers, your clients, anyone who's buying from you, which are now interchangeable words, it's about answering the questions they're asking in natural language before answering the questions that you think you're going to come up for. So you have to find what they want first, right? So an e-com brand, one of the brands I worked with was a supplement, a healthy supplement for body odor, right? It was one of the first. It had a lot of expertise, has clinical studies, etc. They were not presenting that. So they weren't coming up as fast as they could have. They weren't answering the right questions. They were answering questions that they thought they needed to answer, but their product page wasn't answering the right questions. So e-com actually has a really unique opportunity because of ChatGPT in particular has integrated shopping. But if you ask me that same question for Claude, I'm going to tell you it's never going to come up because that's not what Claude is designed to do. So every LLM is not built the same. Every tool is not built the same. Perplexity is actually the best tool to use to see how you're coming up. And that also literally changed like 2 weeks ago. Early May, there was another change in terms of how they're surfacing, these tools are surfacing results because of people doing bad things, like trying to overstuff with FAQs. So FAQs are like not the answer anymore. That was what everybody was touting. Oh, just add an FAQ page. It's not the answer because it's not indexing that content first. It's prioritizing it and it's using it to better understand the brand, but it's not guaranteeing you a spot the way it used to.
Interesting. So if FAQs are not working, I've heard that hub pages are the answer to this. Like, what are your thoughts on that or other alternative solutions to this?
Architecture. So one of the reasons why I started building websites when I first had this business. So I've been consulting on the side of full-time businesses since I'm 17, right? Because I got so tired of hearing, we just paid this much money for a website and it's not working, or I just paid this and I don't understand it, or somebody just gave me a 6-figure quote for a website. And I was like, what now? Like, why are you doing that? It's absurd. Granted, with the infrastructure and the architecture that you need to run some types of website, right? If you have 1,000 SKUs, yeah, you need a website that can support that, right? Like we're talking about a much heavier investment, But if you have 3 SKUs and you're paying $20,000 for a website, it better have an app built into it. It better have some cool headless, setup that is designed to help you grow into the next era. My prediction in 12 months, Wix, Squarespace, Shopify proper, and WordPress are gone. Yeah. Everyone is going to have a headless setup. So what that means is we're going to integrate this into AI built like code with integrations. So there's a WordPress integration, there's a Shopify integration, there's all these different integrations, because vibe coding is a lot easier than even trying to update your Squarespace site. So hubs, to circle it back to your question, are about architecture. So the way that you organize your files is important. So the first thing that you could do today as a business owner is create an about me. So about Vix Reitano, founder. And you make it a markdown file, MD, which you could make in Google Docs. It's just the way you name it. All of these tools read spaces or hyphens as a space. If you don't put a space in your file architecture or in your file naming, it will read everything as one word. So about Vix Reitano founder versus about hyphen Vix hyphen Reitano hyphen founder, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first key, is naming your files correctly, which I would say 99% of people, and like I have some gross files, so this is something that I also have trouble with. Figuring out your file naming system is key. Hub, I agree with it, but I think it's another one of those chasing like the trend as opposed to something that is actually going to make a difference long term.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And yes, I mean, naming hygiene is something that I feel like we all know we should do, right? But we don't always do it.
But it's easy now. Okay, so that's a perfect use for an AI tool, right? Like Claude Cowork, everybody's always like, oh, what should I do with my Claude, right? And Claude is designed as an analysis tool. Anthropic, the parent company of Claude, hires the most humanities majors of any AI tool, which I think is fascinating, because what you have to understand is that they believe in humanities. All the other AI tools are hiring all these technologists, but they believe in the emotional connection that we all get from the arts, right? Like the arts is what moves us. Good words, challenging phrases, things like that. Like think about the best quotes in history. They're things that are designed to make people think. And you only know that if you have a humanitarian background. Like I have a history background because I started with I have a print journalism degree, which I think is really funny. But I had that history background as my minor because I felt like I wanted to be able to reference things in like a pithy way, right? And that's similar to what Anthropic is trying to do. So when you think about the origin of how all these people are building in their different tools, like Google is based on tools that are designed to organize your files. I was going to say your life. They've evolved from that, right? Mm-hmm. Their original premise was don't be evil. I don't really know how much we can say that they succeeded. However, if you think about what they started to do, their goal was to create an organization system. So Gemini does that. Gemini is really good at responding to an organized set of data. OpenAI was designed to keep you in the conversation for as long as possible. OpenAI is a yes machine. OpenAI is not an analytical tool. ChatGPT is OpenAI. Yeah. It's not designed to analyze. It's designed to yes.
It is definitely a yes machine. That's a great way to put it.
But again, like, I mean, I think Sam Altman is a terrible person, and that's like a topic for another conversation. But like, it's not a bad tool. It's just not the right tool for every job. Like you're not going to type on your keyboard with a backhoe, right? Like you're not going to, like, that's the difference here is, am I going to use, what type of tool am I going to use to get this job done? And I think that's where people go astray as well. They forget that these are tools, not the be all end all.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't even really know yet how to go beyond ChatGPT. Like I think that there's still a lot of users who are only using ChatGPT when it comes to AI. And when they think of AI, that's what they think of is ChatGPT. But there really is a lot more, like, especially with Claude, that's a tool that I've been diving into pretty deeply over the last couple weeks, and I mean, it is wow. I mean, it's really changed a lot of things for me, and now I find myself not even using ChatGPT at all unless it's for something personal, like, "Hey, help me find, some travel information," or, any personal things. So it's interesting how, like, our use changes over time too, depending on the LLM.
I actually took over this weekend, I had ChatGPT and Claude, and I took my timing from our High Rocks competition and I uploaded it into each. And I said, this is what happened. Here's our goal time. What do we need to do to get better? And they each had completely different plans, but Claude was like, phase 1, 2, 3, here's what you need to do. And ChatGPT didn't break it out as much. It was just really interesting.
Put it in Perplexity.
Oh,
would be so Perplexity, first of all, and that's like a race, right?
Yeah.
It's like okay. City girl here. Does a soul cycle class, I'm not a runner. Sad when I run. Anyway, so with Perplexity, there's actually health integrated, which I get nervous about, right? Health and finances, I still protect from my data, but I do integrate Stripe with Claude. So like I have certain things that I trust. I still keep them in a sandbox. I'm not a cybersecurity expert. I'm dangerous enough to manage it, but not an expert by any means. And I think cybersecurity experts, like that's all they can do because of how quickly it's changing, especially now. But Perplexity would actually give you like citations of where it found the information and why it considered it to be the best information available for, like it'll give you a running plan or it'll give you like a meal plan or whatever. So I think that piece, Perplexity is really good for research.
Yeah, I'll need to look into that.
It's a multi-model tool. So that's the other thing. Like when we talk about these terms, right? There's the tools themselves. And Lindsay, to your point too, everybody thinks of AI as ChatGPT, but there's multi-model tools. So ChatGPT is run by a company called OpenAI, just like Google is a company called Alphabet, right? So there's the company, there's the tool, then there's the technology built into it. So ChatGPT is just a model, and that model can be used in multiple tools. So Perplexity, when you pay for Perplexity, you get access to every model. So you get Claude's models, you get ChatGPT's models, because anyone can build with the technology. So you can hook it in. Like Harness is a tool that we talk, it's a harness essentially. But the one thing I tell people, another like actionable takeaway is when you start to get overwhelmed by this technology, break it down to the words you know. So if you think about the word harness, even if you just know it in the reference of like, I think of a horse and buggy carriage or like a dog's harness, it's used to connect things. So like that's how I'm telling people to start to think about this. When you hear connector or when you hear customization, like think about the actual meaning of the word instead of the meaning of the word in the space, so that you could then feel like context reading, right? Hooked on phonics is like where this comes from. And I don't think we teach people that anymore. No. So I try to, and our brains are so burned. Like, how do we even go back to that? So that's where I am, if you can't tell, so excited by this technology. And I think it's so fascinating. Yes, there are dangerous, terrible things that I worry about all the time when it comes to that. But every tool can be used, wrong in the wrong hands. Like I don't think that by not using it at all, we're protecting anybody. You have to understand it. So I think that's really important.
And then since you've been giving a lot of these terms and letters, can you explain what GEO is and how it's different from the SEO business owners already know?
The difference between GEO and answer engine optimization is they're kind of two different tools. But GEO is designed so that GEO is meant to create structured content for these tools specifically. So I think that's the piece that a lot of people are also confused by. With traditional SEO, search engine optimization, we were still doing the same thing. We were building content to be found by a machine model. We just didn't talk about it that way. So traditional SEO focuses on clicks, GEO, like just link clicks without any true definition of like, okay, so they clicked on your page, so what, right? Like, I think that's where SEO always stopped. But GEO is more about becoming that cited source, because most searches today in 2026, and this probably will change by the time this goes live, so I don't want to be caught saying something that has changed. Most searches today, though, are very much zero click. So what they're doing is, like I told you about Perplexity, you're coming up as the source, and like they gather the information from your site without you ever having to click through to the site. It's harder to track. But when you see your URL as the source, people then are going. Like, I'm able to see in GA4 traffic to our clients. We see it in the back of Shopify. We use Triple Whale for the full journey for ecom.
Mm-hmm.
For outside of the ecom space, I think like there's other tools that work, but really, I mean, and that's the work that we do, right? That's the work I've been doing, is we build these systems to make sure your marketing and revenue systems are talking to each other in the way that they need so you can make business decisions. And GA4 is a good tool. I think it's probably the best out there right now, but it really depends on what your end goal is.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard for a business owner too, if they're not clicking through to your site and then you are showing up in an LLM and you have no idea either. So it's all very interesting, and be curious to see how this evolves over time.
There are other tools though, like Profound is one AI tool that I like for tracking your LLM visibility. It's agents that'll track, well, it's agents and it will track. That's a whole other definition, right? There's the chat, which is the conversation you're having. There's a workflow, which is very similar to what you do in Zapier, right? Like, which I think is a good frame of reference for everybody. A workflow is granted permissions to go through steps. Also, if this, then that is like the OG of that technology, where if you do this, then that will happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Agents take it to the next level. Agents are fully autonomous, which means you have given them permission to operate on their own. But the big difference with an agent versus a workflow is that an agent remembers, and if programmed correctly, can improve itself over time. So an agent is like a junior employee. We're talking like very junior, but an agent is given the skills, the reference material, the rules, and the instructions, and the permission to operate whatever you want it to operate independently. So that's the real key. Like what most people are talking about now is using multiple agents to check their work. So kind of, Kayla, what you did as a human, we can set up agents to do, where the ChatGPT agent does what it's best at, the Perplexity agent does what it's best at, and then the Claude agent does what it's best at, Lindsay, to your point, like so that they get independent review of each other. And that's where you start to see the real magic. Now, of course, it takes a long time to set up. So for most business owners, that's not necessary. That type of analysis just isn't required.
Yeah, I think for everyone listening too, a good exercise to do would be to take a prompt that you have and use that same prompt in ChatGPT, in Claude, in Perplexity, and in Gemini, and see and compare and contrast what the different results are. I think that's an interesting exercise to do. I've been seeing a lot of people actually post about that online and comparing and contrasting the answers. So interesting to see what they all say.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing too, to the point of like, what does it look like moving forward, right? Nobody knows. And if anybody tells you they know, they're lying, because what we were doing 2 weeks ago is a lot different than what we're doing even right now, right? So everything changes that quickly. But that doesn't mean that you have to be behind. So the thing that hasn't changed is how we're sourcing the way people are searching. So one prompt to try in any tool, although I think it works best in Claude in the terminal, which means you're using like VS Code or Cursor, because it gives you access to higher level understanding. Let's call it that, right? versus like the plain old chat, but it still works in the chat function, is to say, give me 100 questions that my ideal client or customer, interchangeable, is Googling in the middle of the night and asking on forums, Google Trends, search, and Reddit, and then rank them by which ones will drive me the most conversion focused traffic first. You get the questions, it'll rank them. Also, like a key thing, because now tokens are a big deal, is to say, don't create an artifact until I tell you, because it'll make you like this beautiful chart of all these visualizations, which will burn through everything. And then all your listeners will be very mad at you. So please make sure you tell it, do not make me an artifact until I tell you to. But that is a great way to start your blog posts. List, that's a great way to start your organic social. That's a great way to come up with topics, right? So that particular prompt should give you a good foundation. And 100 questions, I suggest people do that every 60 days. I think we'll get to a place where we probably have to do it every 30. But Google Trends, forums, and Reddit are kind of the place where these questions are being sourced.
Yeah, that's a great prompt. So for everyone listening, please go and type that into Claude and see what pops out for you. I love that. Thank you for that. So you mentioned organic social, and we'd love to chat about how all of this impacts social media. Because organic social historically has been about reach, it's been about engagement. How does a brand's social media strategy need to change when you're also trying to get cited by LLMs like ChatGPT or Perplexity? Like, are those two goals complementary or are they conflicting with each other?
I think they're complementary. However, I think the objective is still somewhat conflicting. And what I mean by that is when you are going out, if your objective is reach, which is sometimes needed, right? Like if your goal is to grow in follower count, you're not always going to be able to achieve the goal of becoming referenced because you need to be so consistent in the reference piece. Whereas engagement is far more dependent on trends and like what's coming up in the moment. It's hard to build expertise that way. Just is, right? I think you can build expertise through that growth strategy, but I think it's not the same as purely conversion focused. Also, what do you define as a conversion is like my constant question to people, because a follower is conversion for certain brands, right? An email subscriber is conversion for certain brands. Like everybody has different goals. And I think that's where you have to start first. Which goal will bring you revenue first? Like I am revenue always, right? And again, revenue means a lot of things. So to your point of organic social, it matters a lot. Instagram, there was like this big announcement that Instagram was being indexed by Google search. And I'm like, yeah, that was announced.
Yeah,
like that happened.
That's happened a long time ago.
Right. And then it comes back up and I'm like, yo, does anybody read anything? Like, it makes me crazy when they're like, this is new. I'm like, it's not new. You just found out about it. So like that, I think there's a huge opportunity to answer the questions that I just told you to find in your captions, because that helps with establish your credibility. And also tying the words in your social posts back to the actual words on your website, right? Like at one point, we did a lot of organic social, and I loved when people would be like, why are the words the same? Are you not making us original content? And I'd be like, no, it's for continuity, right? And I think that's the argument now. The head of Instagram talks about that a lot. Like I love following him. He's interesting. But also he shares a lot. Like you should be resharing content, which I'm sure you guys would agree with me. Like anybody on the other side who does this for people is like, wow, we've been telling people that a really long time. Would have been great if they would have listened to, right? Like it's a battle.
Yep.
So I think on the organic side, we are going to see much more repetition. And that's what the LLMs are great at, is repackaging and repurposing your best hits is like what I think you should be thinking of. But the language, the words that you use in the caption, even in the metadata and on your website, and like potentially on the images, I say that with a caveat because technically not all the models are reading the images, but we're very close to that being like standard. So I would include that in your workflow sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point too, because I think sometimes in companies, the organic social team and the website team are not synced and they're not working together in any sort of like cross-functional way. So I think that's a really important takeaway is that your social media content should be repurposed to your website and that language should live on your website so that it can be accessed by LLMs.
And there is a link there, right? Like it's going to come back. It'll show up. And I mean, I've seen Instagram posts as answers sometimes. So I think, and I think the more that we see ChatGPT, OpenAI is the first trying to push ads. So once that test is done, then we'll really get a sense of how ads can function in this new environment more than just promoting your like shopping pages, essentially. Like, will answers be able to be ads? And the best test for that is Reddit. So building out a Reddit strategy, like I really think depending on the brand, most e-com brands should be building out Reddit first. Reddit also lets you respond to like looking up your competitors. That's another great prompt. Here are my 3 competitors. See what people are saying negative sentiment on Reddit is. You could do that in any LLM tool, and you could even build like a dashboard to track it. I mean, these are the kind of tools we build people all day long, because that will give you, so you as the competitor brand, then you start answering, if the issue is, I don't know, took too long to ship or tastes bad or whatever the answer is, or my kid didn't like the way it tastes, and yours, you have testimonials that speak to the exact opposite. That's a huge win for credibility. So I think for social media creators, because it's not only managers, right? And the managers are real leadership roles now, which I think is a whole other conversation. But having that conversation, letting them drive what the focus is quarter to quarter, month to month is going to be important.
So Vix, this has been super educational. I think we're going to need to do a part 2 episode with you, but to kind of wrap things up, can you give us 3 takeaways from today's episode and kind of where people can get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It was a pleasure. This is so fun to talk about. I want everyone to be as excited as I am and not afraid. That is my goal. So 3 takeaways. First thing that I would say is which is funny because this is how we always used to start. I used to say find your 5, but now I'm going to tell you to break it down and calm yourself down and just find 3 competitors, whether they are founders or other direct competitors of your brand, and analyze them individually in each of its own chat. So not just ChatGPT, but in whatever AI tool you're using, the prompt is, tell me what this brand does well, where the opportunities are, and what I could do to capture their audience. Like if you're a shoe brand, put in Nike, right? Put in the best in class so that you can better understand the results that are coming up and how you can create or craft your own strategy. The second actionable takeaway is to start a Reddit channel, like yesterday, because Reddit is going to be important. Threads, where Lindsay and I connected, is equally important, right? I think if you don't have a word first platform strategy, and it doesn't have to be a blog, for your overall brand strategy, you're going to miss out on the opportunity to explain things that your ideal customer is looking for. Then the third thing would be it's because it's change management, and this is the hardest piece, but stop thinking about people as content personas or content pillars, right? You have to really shift and think about what is the answer, what's the outcome. So the goal would be to put in your outcome and then ask it to describe or ask you questions about how you achieve that outcome for other people. So really, all 3 of those are related to using the LLMs to teach you how they work. And remember that too. I mean, I think that's the biggest takeaway here is ask. If you don't know, ask the LLM. Like that's the whole point. What can you do for me? How can you help me grow my brand? What are some things that I may be missing, right? Asking it to find your blind spots is what it's designed to do. Now, the other thing that I put in my instructions is don't lie, don't make stuff up, and cite your sources. I will tell it to do that sometimes. And then the last piece is if you feel like you're getting too much affirmative content, like if you're like, wow, this sounds so great, and like I'm a genius, then you could say to it, where are the gaps? Will this actually work? And are you just telling me what I want to know?
Those are awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, really designing for outcomes, I think, is a big shift for business owners and mindset and how social media managers honestly have been creating content and strategy. So I think this is really interesting, very super informative for our audience. So Vix, thank you so much for joining us today. As Vix mentioned, we connected on Threads. I posted that we were looking to speak to someone about AI for Dose of Social, and Vix responded. So, power of social media connecting all of us today. So, super awesome and great to have you as a guest on the show. And looking forward to part 2.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you. See, but I answered a question that you asked. So I think that's the best answer, right?
You designed for outcomes.
Boom. Thank you. See, I need to take that one now and be like, look at this.
Look at that. I love it. So, Vix, if someone listening would like to find you online, where can they find you?
At Vix Reitano on all social handles, and agency, the number 6, letter B like boy.com, but also vixreitano.ai.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Vix. Thanks for listening to Dose of Social. We're out.
Yeah.
Bye.